Hello, everybody. We are back. This is Speaking of Spirits. I'm Colleen here with my co-host,
Dirty Birdie.
Dirty Birdie. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
The secret government agent, I guess.
yeah, the secret government agent. I just love that. So, if you don't know what that reference is, go back and watch Nightmare Road, the episode on spirit photography. We uncovered Dirty Bird as a secret agent. So the list has now been compromised.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I'm going to have to change my name again.
we're going to have to come up with another one and move you, just kind of move you, shuffle you around the US. So this is a really interesting topic that we have today. And I had to do some research on it because I'd heard about it, but I really had to dig into it. So this is called correspondence. And so it means, it describes a phenomenon that emerged early in the 20th century and is connected to automatic writing. So automatic writing is, you know what that is, right, Dirty Bird?
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, I heard about it. I didn't look too much into it.
Yeah. So automatic writing is kind of like a form of meditation where you're connecting with the spirit world, and you use a pen and a paper. And as you start meditating and just kind of freeing up your mind or thinking about somebody you want to connect with, but a lot of time it happens when you're just trying to meditate and let your mind go. You can draw stuff, or you write sentences and phrases or names or something like that. It's supposed to come through you. So they're channeling through you. Okay. So,
okay.
Yeah. So some people would call that a form of possession, but it really isn't. You're channeling to allow something to come through you for a moment. Okay. So
like a conduit.
Yeah, exactly. So what it does is, it's a practice in which a person writing in a state of semi-trance may obtain scripts, like phrases and words, that are originating, what they say, apparently from the unconscious mind. So you're not consciously thinking about the word dirty bird. It comes through you and you write it down. So it's not supposed to be a conscious act. So, and I want to give a lot of kudos to this article here, that I am using primarily for the information, for this. This is an article that was written, and if you are not familiar with this group, you should be if you're into the paranormal. They're really a wealth of information. It's called the now I'm going to say, what's it called? It's the Society for Psychical Research, and they're in England, and you can subscribe to them and get their literature. And they've done they've been around for a very long time, and they've I believe this article is from Trevor Hamilton, and the society, so SPR, they've done a tremendous amount of studies on this. I think there's something like in the order of 3,000 different research articles related to this. And it stemmed from, basically, there was a gentleman who before he passed away, he was very involved in the paranormal. And this was back in the 1901. Okay. His name was Frederick Myers, and he was a co-founder for the Society for Psychical Research. And before he passed away, he had told one of his very good friends named Margaret Verrill, if I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. She was a lecturer at Cambridge University, and she was involved in a lot of this paranormal world. And before he died, he had told her that he was going to send her messages after death. Okay. So the aim was that if he survived the dying of his body, we would know, like people would know that he was still alive in the afterlife, right?
Okay.
And mentally aware, because he's going to be able to send these people messages. So there, about 2 years later, Verrill's daughter Helen, also involved in all of this stuff, thought, well, let's try this automatic writing, right? And so there was another woman who was in India at the time, and so all these gals corresponded with each other. They knew each other. Well, obviously, the two are mother and daughter, but they thought, well, let's give this a try. And so, as the 1906, I think, between 1901 when he died, or sometime after when he developed the Institute in 1901, and when Frederick was Frederick, right? When he died, let me get back. Frederick Myers. When Frederick Myers died, they started this automatic writing, and they kind of dismissed a lot of it until some researchers started looking really, really closely and said, no, wait a minute, something's going on here, because all of you people, without being able to, I mean, this is 1906, so we don't have a whole lot of technology out there. We have some, but not a lot. And they said, without you being able to correspond with each other and on different times, you guys are writing basically the same information to connect the dots. So they were dismissive because, like, the word yellow would come through on an automatic writing one night. Well, then the gal in India would have a sentence around the word yellow. And then Margaret's daughter would write another part of the sentence. And they started putting this together, and they were actual messages when you started connecting the dots.
Okay, so there's like puzzle pieces, except all over the world.
Yeah.
And you're like, I got this. So I got this. What did you get? And then they stitched it all together to become a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, or like a paragraph. Some people would get a whole sentence. So, and it was when a research officer named Alice Johnson with the SPR. So she was digging through all of these documents, and she saw, like you said, this jigsaw puzzle emerge. So these were actual phrases and messages. And what was really interesting was that Alice Johnson argued that this could only be achieved by the influence of a single person. So Frederick, okay? In this instance, it would be like Frederick. He's sending messages to the whole group, but not all of them are getting the whole message. They're getting bits and pieces, but when you put it together, it's a whole message. So maybe the gal in India was maybe meditating a little deeper, so her message was a little longer, and the gal, you know what I mean? But when they started putting together, so all of these messages, I guess they'd given all of this correspondence to SPR, and then nobody really thought anything of it until Alice started putting these pieces together and went, oh my God, look at this. So, there were other authors of the scripts, so I don't think it was just these three people. It was like people that Frederick knew all over the place were getting these messages. And some of them were getting messages in languages they didn't know, but they were writing it down. But Frederick knew the languages. So,
okay.
Yeah, so like it would be like me writing Latin. I don't know Latin, but I would write a phrase in Latin, and it didn't mean anything to me. It's garbage. But when these researchers looked at it, well, they said, well, Frederick knew Latin, and this is what this phrase is.
Okay, why would you use Latin?
I think he wanted to think about it this way: if he's sending, I think it was a good like control measure. So if he's corresponding with everybody in English,
okay,
then they thought maybe they were communicating.
Yeah, that would definitely make a lot of people skeptical. So he's like, well, I know Latin. toss it out there. Someone will write it down because nobody knows Latin.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, it's that makes sense. It's more of a control method then.
Yeah. So what they thought was they asserted that a single theme distributed between various automatists is what they call them, but it's, automatic writing people who do in this. None of them knew what the others were writing, could prove that a single independent mind or group of minds was behind the whole phenomenon. So putting the pieces of the jigsaw together, okay? And one of the other things that was really quite interesting was some of these people who were doing automatic writing were writing in Greek, like,
Oh, geez.
and they're like, well, we don't know what this means. Well, when they put it all together with the other people, they said, oh, well, it's part of a sentence.
Okay.
So example. So here's some examples. On August 6, 1906, Alice Fleming was at her home in India, and she wrote the words in automatic script, yellow, YELO, and then yellow ivory right behind it. Well, it didn't really mean anything to her, but that's what she got. 2 days later, on August 8th, Margaret Verrill, who was in her home in Cambridge, wrote, I have done it tonight. Yellow is the written word. Say only yellow.
Okay.
Okay. And then there was another, there's more. So Margaret Verrill, who's in Cambridge in Britain, wrote on April 29th, warmed both hands before the fire of life. It fades and I'm ready to depart. And then she also drew the Greek letter delta. Okay. Looks like an 8. Okay.
Okay.
Then she wrote in Latin, give lilies with full hands. And then in English, come away, come away. And again in Latin, the words pale death. So all these phrases are coming. And then she wrote, you finally got the word plainly written all along in your own writing. Look back. So these are messages coming through. So
Okay.
that last sentence seems to be instruction, right? Look back. Look back.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The lilies with the full hands. That's usually associated. I think I could be wrong. That's usually associated with death, like at a funeral. Lilies
Oh, yeah.
represent
Oh, right.
resurrection.
So the lilies, like in the casket, they're holding the lilies in their
Yeah.
hand.
Full
Yeah,
hands,
right.
and lilies also represent the resurrection. That's why you see lilies for sale a lot during Easter.
Oh, yeah, right. Easter lily. Yeah, okay. So there was this, I guess this person named Piddington started looking for all of these connections. And this gal in Boston, now we have another connection in Boston, Leonora Piper, was in a trance doing this automatic writing. And when she was coming out of the trance, she doesn't know what it means, but she says the word, I think it's Thanos.
Yep, Thanos.
Thanatos. But she's like, I'm compelled to say this word, but she didn't know what it means, right? And then at the same time, in India, they're reading, the gal in India's writing Maurice Morris, Mors, and with that, the shadow of death fell on his limbs. So as Piddington is starting to research all this and trying to figure out, okay, what does Thanatos mean? It is the ancient Greek word for death.
I came across something when I was looking, and Thanatos is the ancient Greek god of death.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here this guy has been talking about death to all these people, and they started connecting the dots, and it's like, okay, that makes sense. So the point is, and we have a ton of more examples that we can go through, but this automatic writing, so I have a little story, and I think I told it before, but it's interesting. I haven't really spent a lot of time doing it because I can't get my mind loose, like shut down enough to do it. I'm always working on the next podcast, the next topic. I'm doing something, right?
Yeah.
My dad, though, he was really good at meditating, and he wasn't meditating in the yoga pose thing. He'd take a bucket of his beer out with his dogs in the forest, sit in the sun, and just relax. And he was the Pink Panther cartoonist, and he did a lot of pen and ink, and a lot of times that's where he would draw. He would take his big sketch pad and he would just draw whatever came to his mind. And a lot of those prints sold quite a bit because they were beautiful. It's like his work was freer and easier, like an aircraft flying through the trees or so. You know what I mean? It was just neat. So he was clearing a little spot on his land, and he lived in the pretty thick forest. He was clearing a little spot because from his living room window you could see Mount Lassen, and he wanted a clear view of the volcano. And so they had dropped some trees, and he was, not a lot, but it was a nice little clearing. And then he built this really cool little like a garden shed. I don't know what he used it for. He just built it because he felt like he wanted to build it. Well, when he got done building it, it was really cute, and it looked like like a miner's hut, miner's shack. It was really kind of a neat little structure. And so one day he's sitting out there with all the dogs, and he's, drinking his beer, and he's flipping potato chips to the dogs. He's got a sketch pad, and he said he started kind of dozing in the sunlight. And when he woke up, he had drawn the little shack and a name and a date. And he thought, well, that's interesting. When he woke up, he didn't remember doing any of that, right? So he looks at the name and the date, and he can't put it together. So he's telling one of his buddies in town. Well, in town, we still had have a gold assay office because there's still a lot of gold mining up there. So you can bring in gold that you find, and they'll pay you for it. They weigh it and give you the market value. And so he talks to his buddy at the assay office, and this guy said, I'm wondering if could that been somebody who had a gold claim on your property, because it's all gold mining country. And he goes, well, I don't know. I have no idea. How would I search that? Well, it took him a couple of years to figure it out. And sure enough, that guy had a mining claim just downhill in the creek.
Oh, wow. That is super interesting.
Yeah.
So that sounds like he went into a meditative state, and Mr. Miner was just like, hey, you're on my property.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't do anything malicious, but he's just like, I'm here. This is my old property.
Yeah. So I think that's what this automatic writing is all about. So this gentleman who had worked this claim, was trying to send a message out to my dad. My dad somehow connected with him in this phase of meditation, and somehow those two minds connected, and the miner was able to have my dad write his name and date.
Yeah, but he also he also drew the little shack out there.
Yeah.
Maybe he was just like, thanks for the shack. I needed it.
Could be. Oh yeah, right. So what that shack then it represented to my dad was this connection to the history of the land. And my dad, when he was clearing the land in the shack, he would put, because gold and quartz run hand in hand. So when you find a quartz vein in gold country, you're going to find a gold vein. That's just the way the veins work. And my dad had beautiful walls built all around his property with these gigantic quartz rocks. And most of them were not just the white milky quartz, they were the glassy quartz. They were gorgeous. And so there's so much quartz up there, that there's gold. And so that, he never found any gold on his property, but the quartz veins were there and they were strong. And if they came loose, he would just pile them, and it eventually made retaining walls out of this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So he found, as he was clearing this area, he found that he was finding like old hinges and old, they weren't horseshoes, they were mule shoes, because mules and donkeys have different shaped hooves than a horse. They're very narrow and long. So he was finding mule shoes out there, old old nails, the very square nails that they used to use to build stuff, hinges, all kinds of stuff. And so that went into the shack. He put all that stuff back into the shack when he built it.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like he did have um maybe a little cabin or a shack with some like a small corral or something like that that wasted away. And
Yep.
then for some reason your dad was compelled to build another one, and that maybe the miner was just like, hey, thanks for the new shack. So
Right.
I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you thanks by having you draw it, and then I'm going to give you my name and date
Yeah.
as a
I
thank you.
know. It was fascinating because he never told me this happened until one day I had one of his sketchbooks and I was on his property and I was sitting out there sketching and I'm flipping through it. And I'm like, hey, Dad, what is this? This is really cool. What is this? And he told me the story. I'm like, why didn't you call me and tell me the date this happened? This is so cool. Yeah, my dad always just leaves. So, yeah, it's pretty, yeah, it was pretty cool. So let's get into, there's this John Piddington that I mentioned before.
What a name.
Yeah,
Piddington.
Piddington. It's like Paddington Bear, right? So he was working with the medium Lenora Piper. And in 1906, Lenora was invited to England to work with John Piddington to see if she could contribute to the cross correspondence phenomena. Okay, because now she's a medium, not necessarily an automist, right? Automist. Anyway, automatic writing person. Automatist. It's really hard for me to say that. So she goes over to England, and when this Piper lady, when she goes into her trance, Piddington engaged in a conversation so when Piper would go into a trance, she had this person named Rector who acted as her in-between. So she had given this person a name. So she's a medium. She calls on Rector to come forward and then to correspond with Franklin. Franklin, right? God, I'm so bad with names. Wasn't he the guy? Frederick Myers. God, that's how bad I am. I can lose it in 2 seconds. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. So she has a go-between named Rector. So when John Piddington is talking to Lenora when she's in a trance, he's actually talking with Rector, and he asks Rector to bring forward some messages. And this gal, Piper, writes a message in Latin, and it's meaningless to her when she comes out of the trance because she doesn't know Latin. Okay. And she asked Myers, who's dead, to relay this phrase back to Margaret Verrill. Remember, she was the one that he initially said, I want to talk to you this way when I die. So Piddington asked during the trance, Frederick, hey, relay the message that you just gave us back to Margaret Verrill. We want to see if you can do that. Okay. So now the message is going to be written out twice. And,
Okay.
And the script, so the script from Verrill and Piper are almost the same. And it says, justice holds the scales that gives the words, but an anagram would be better. Tell him that rat, star, tars, and so on. Try this. It has been tried before. So he gives them letters, but they're mixed up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anagram.
It's an anagram. So it's either tears or stare, what they came up with. And so they both got kind of the same message. And then again, they get another message that says, aster, Latin for star, teres, Greek for sign, and also an anagram for star. So Margaret gets this message and Piper getting this message. So it's basically the same message saying the same thing, just written a little bit differently. And they're like, wow, that worked. So it worked. So Piper going into a trance, and this other living person, Piddington, was able to talk to Frederick Myers and say, okay, we've gotten this message, now send the same message to Margaret. And it's not word for word the same, but it's very, very close. It's the same in concept.
That is super interesting. Huh.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this. There's just a ton, like I said, there's like 3,000 different research articles on this cross correspondence. And I think it would be really interesting if anybody out there watching this has had anything like this happen. That would be interesting. What I found interesting is that you have 3 people in 3 different parts of the world communicating with this gentleman who passed away. And
Yeah.
they're coming up with text that feeds each other.
Yep. Yeah. So they're all getting kind of sort of the same message, but they're not. So they have to communicate with each other to figure out what the sentence actually is. Like jigsaw puzzle, essentially.
It is. Yeah, and then he wrote a lot on he would just give them clues to start seeking things out, and they would find the clues, and they would just in different writings, like in different books and all kinds of stuff like that. So this
Oh yeah, that sounds like this is off topic and it's going to be a different topic later on. But that sounds like cicada 3301. Have you heard about that?
No.
It was an internet scavenger hunt that people put out, and people, for real smart people, computer wise, and they would have to go out and search out these clues on the internet. And when they figured it out, they would give them another clue from a book or a piece of music, or really, really obscure references. So
Interesting.
it's kind of sounds like what he's doing. He's just like, okay, well,
And of course, there's a lot of criticism about a lot of this stuff. Some people say that the people doing this, spiritualists convinced of survival, found it elitist and overcomplex and inferior to the best evidence provided by certain mental and physical mediums. I'm like, I don't even understand what they're trying to say here. These women are elitists because they're all of a sudden they're getting these messages in a trance. I don't understand that. These gals didn't ask to have this happen. They just, once, when Frederick had told Margaret first, he goes, I want to try this when I die. And then he dies. And she's like, okay, well, let's give it this go. Let's see what happens. So she and her daughter start, and then this other lady over and she starts. I mean, it's just all over the world. So they started putting these pieces together. I don't understand. Some people are saying that these people were in cohorts with each other. What do you say? Like conspiring.
Cahoots.
Cahoots. Yeah, cahoots with each other. They're conspiring, and somehow they were in communication before all this happened. And you got to remember the time frame. I don't know how. I guess you could get 1906 telegram with phones. Phones weren't out there in every house.
No, it would probably more than likely it would be letters and telegram.
Letters and telegram. And these gals were coming up with the same phraseology on 3 different continents within days of each other. So unless they were getting they were sending instant telegrams to each other, then there is no way for them to do this, right?
No. I'm trying to think. I could be way wrong, but I don't think they had international telegrams back then. I could be way wrong. So like our telegram, when we used to send telegrams, it would stay in the United States, but it wouldn't go overseas. I could be way wrong. Oh, kitty.
Let me look.
Give me a second. I got to put my cat upstairs.
Let's see.
Come on, Booger.
I am looking to see when the first telegram first first
Ah, okay.
okay. The first International Telegraph Conference was first March 1965, but so it was the first, they may have 1844 they laid a line, I guess, through the ocean. So I'm not sure. Anyway, it's pretty interesting to me that unless these gals were really working to be um,
Cohorts, cahoots.
cahoots with each other, then I would tend to think this is somewhat legit. This is legitimate. And then when the gal goes into the trance and what she writes down, and unless they then called Margaret somehow and told her what to write down, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's possible. Like I said, I could be way wrong.
Yeah, I think probably they did have transatlantic or all of these different. They probably did have telegraphs back then, but I don't know. I would be curious to know what listeners think. I do know that automatic writing is a skill, and like I said, in my dad's case, it was proven to be correct information. But I don't know if people have tried it. I encourage people to try stuff like that because, especially with your relatives, right? Because you might get information you may not have otherwise known, and I think it's pretty cool. But that's automatic writing. This is cross correspondence. So this is many people getting phrases and putting it all together.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not. Yeah, it's the same message, but a little different is interesting to me. Yeah, it's not like one of them just got like a completely different message.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna have
Things
to
that
look
make you go,
Yep.
There's so much in this world we don't understand.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to look at stuff you don't understand.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think a lot of this is coincidence. Margaret gets the word yellow. The other lady gets a sentence with the word yellow. I mean, I think it's interesting. I'm really glad that this SPR group is out there. They're still out there, by the way.
Yeah, wasn't that the group that investigated that really haunted house in England? The same people?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Oh, wait a minute. That one, the Enfield poltergeist?
yeah, the infield
Yeah, I
the
think you're right.
poltergeist.
I think they did send somebody over there.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're still around. They do a lot of really amazing work, and I think it's some group. I think I'm going to go ahead and join. You can join so that you can get access to all of their literature and their back reference documents and everything like that. Because I think they probably have an incredible amount of information that would be really interesting to read.
yeah, that'd be fun to look through.
Yeah, yeah. So if you are in England and you know about them, you can go to their actual building and rent books. And some books are available. They will mail them. Like, you can check them out. You can mail them. They'll mail them to you, and then you have to send them back, kind of thing. But they also do have a lot of their stuff that's now electronic. That they've probably scanned and is now electronic. And so I think, yeah, look them up. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll have to look them up. See if I can't find something online.
Yeah, I just can't find like the English price for joining the group, to subscribe. I have to figure that out, but it's all in pounds. But I just have to convert the pounds to dollars and go from there, I guess.
Oh yeah, that's simple.
Yeah. So, but I don't. Yeah. Anyway, well, I think this was an interesting topic. I hadn't really heard about it, so let us know what you feel. And shoot us an email with topics if there's something you want us to look into. You can use our Facebook at Pocatello Paranormal Research. Send us a message that way. You can send us a message on at Colleen at Pocatello Paranormal Research. That there's various ways to get hold of us.
We have a Discord for the younger
Discord.
folks. Yep.
Yeah, I've never been on it yet. That tells you how old I am. So, yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining in. Until next week.
All right. Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to Speaking of Spirits, powered by Pocatello Paranormal Research in Pocatello, Idaho. Thank you for joining us today. We're glad you could be here. If you're enjoying the podcast, please do us a favor and go to whatever platform you are listening to the podcast on and give us a review. We prefer the 5-star reviews. This helps us know how we're doing, and it helps others to find the podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you on our next podcast.